At 22, I've never dated but fell hard for a girl who only saw me as a friend. I see you as a friend too, she told me while I fought depression and family tragedy. After my mother passed, I wondered, why didn't she ever ask how I was? Can I really change my story? Hello, I am a 22-year-old man and I have never had a relationship or flirted with anyone in my life. It is not that I have never experienced love. Indeed, I have fallen in love, but I have never had a girlfriend to rely on or someone with whom to discuss my problems. Due to this situation, I have begun to feel profoundly lonely. While you are reading this post, you may feel like I am recounting my life story, but I kindly ask that you refrain from judging me. At this moment, I truly feel as though I am in a vast void. I am uncertain if it is appropriate to express this on this subreddit, but I would be extremely appreciative if you could assist me in any way. For all this time, my life has been exceptionally challenging. I can confidently say that I have been depressed for roughly 9 years, and throughout this period, I have sought someone who could help me escape this misery. My relationship with most of my family has not been good. I had a difficult childhood and an exhausting, unhappy, and angry adolescence. Throughout my life, the conflict between my mother and father, health issues that began during high school, and the pressure of university entrance examinations took a toll on me. My life before that was not particularly great either, of course. I grew up in an environment devoid of empathy, so I could say that living in a controlling family atmosphere contributed to my struggles. However, I must admit that I also did not put forth much effort myself. Many of the mistakes I made have also contributed to my current predicament. In my first year of high school, there was a girl I admired. As I acclimated to the new environment and formed new friendships, I eventually discovered that my best friend from school was also interested in that girl, and they had been classmates in middle school. After learning this, I buried my feelings for her deep within myself and began to view her as a forbidden fruit. I also decided to rethink my approach toward her. Over time, my two closest friends during my high school years became those two, and ironically, we were all in the same class throughout high school. In case you are not familiar, the high school I attended implemented a system called the butterfly system, where every year, all students continue their education in a new class with new people and new teachers. During this period, I kept hearing about my friend's feelings for her, but as you can imagine, my friend was also hesitant to express his feelings to her. Meanwhile, I was truly living in my own shell, as family issues turned my life upside down, making it really difficult for me to meet new people. Nobody wants to talk to or befriend a perpetually grumpy person sitting in a corner. Consequently, aside from a small group of 4 or 5 individuals I befriended during my first year, I had no one. By the third year of high school, I thought I had developed feelings for another girl. She was a friend of the girl I admired, and it was a new class with a new environment. However, in hindsight, I now realize that I was merely infatuated with her appearance, all the while attempting to forget the girl I truly loved. I was foolish enough to tell the girl I liked, "Yes, I have feelings for your friend." During this time, I began speaking with the girl I admired more, attempting to forget my true feelings. This only led me into a deeper mess. After school, we would talk for at least 2 hours every day, and on weekends, sometimes for 3 or 4 hours. This lasted for an entire semester. Ultimately, my shyness prevented me from making eye contact with her. So when school concluded and the break began, I did not even go to collect my report card. In the dead of night, I texted the girl I adored's friend and confessed my feelings. It was the first time I had ever opened up to a girl, and I was so excited and nervous that after sending the message, I fainted temporarily due to the silence that followed for the first 10 minutes, even though it was read. When I regained consciousness, I had received a rather harsh rejection. It was not because I expected my feelings to be reciprocated, but because she was contemplating transferring schools. I decided to confess my feelings to her because I wanted to release the burden of keeping them inside. Unfortunately, I was met with a terrible reaction. To keep this part brief, I will summarize. In the following period, the girl did not transfer and remained in the same class as me. Eventually, I realized how awful a person she was due to her actions and behavior, and she completely faded from my mind. The worst part, however, was the attitude she displayed as if I had done something profoundly wrong. Throughout the entire semester, her actions behind the backs of her two closest friends were entirely unacceptable. I share this to clarify that I do not want you to think, oh, this is just typical teenage behavior. No, even at that age and even later in life, these were actions that should not have occurred. I am not angry or upset, merely disappointed. During this time, my closest friend also confessed his feelings to the girl I admired, who was my other close friend. However, many unpleasant things transpired between them. He acted possessively, and after being rejected, he started labeling her as if she belonged to him. When his feelings were not reciprocated, he reacted very poorly, using harsh language in a private setting. The girl I liked rightly put him in his place. She is an incredibly important person to me. I even contemplated suicide due to family issues that I have not mentioned here. Nobody knew about this, not even her, until now. If she had not texted me that day to ask how I was doing, even if she had been a minute late, I would not be posting this here. She would talk to me constantly, we would chat and share our troubles. She truly provided me with all the moral support I could desire from a girlfriend, essentially becoming my lifeline. Our conversations continued until university began, at which point they slowly diminished. Did I cease during that time? No, the second greatest foolishness was that I began telling her about another girl I was in love with again. How foolish am I, right? There was a girl who conversed with me during her first year of university solely to enhance her grades, but after a few months she dropped out of school and sought asylum. Throughout this period, I continued to speak with the girl I loved. However, we were no longer having the same conversations as before. Sometimes I would send a message and she would respond with incredibly brief replies, leading our discussions to an abrupt end and so forth. Then came the real breaking point. The person I had called my closest friend abandoned us after insulting and humiliating our group of 4 to 5 friends from high school. The cause of this was his fixation on a rejection, as he had engaged in extensive reflection, watched videos for years, and participated in Facebook forums. In short, he morphed into a person consumed by bitterness. As for me, I developed a contempt for my own self. When I initiated an argument with him in the group, expressing that I was uncomfortable with his misogynist attitudes, he brusquely told me to leave if I felt uncomfortable, and we ultimately parted ways. Even this shocked me. It marked the first instance in which I severed ties with a friend. Until that point, I truly believed I was such an idiot for concealing my feelings for such a misogynistic person, particularly after I learned that the girl I admired in high school had been interested in me, but had let it go because she thought I was too friendly. Let me provide an example. I was utterly clueless, failing to understand girl signals, a deficiency that still affects me. I was using a colloquial term to address a girl that is commonly understood in my country where gender roles are not distinctly defined. I was using an expression akin to bro. You can imagine the gender-neutral and casual essence of this term. From that day forth, I naturally stopped using that term, although it took me 5 years to recognize my mistake. The tumultuous years of my life did not come to an end. On the one hand, the COVID-19 pandemic was ongoing, and on the other, a significant turning point in my life was approaching. One morning, my father discovered my mother lying on the ground in the garden. After being hospitalized and undergoing observation for a while, we learned that my mother had cancer. Everyone was devastated, including me, my 2 sisters, my father, my aunts, my mother's relatives, my grandmother, and my grandfather. We were heartbroken. While my mother was hospitalized, my grandfather received the news and collapsed while leaving the hospital, subsequently suffering a brain hemorrhage. We had to conceal this from my mother for 6 to 7 months. Recognizing the importance of maintaining morale during the cancer treatment process, my mother's treatment proved even more challenging for us, as she consistently made excuses to avoid her treatment, intentionally neglecting her health and exacerbating the already overwhelming situation. While enduring this experience, I attended a terrible university in a city I had believed would be favorable. I can definitively state that my university life was more distressing than high school. On one hand, my mother's condition deteriorated, and on the other, my loneliness and sense of abandonment dragged me deeper into depression and despair. I navigated through extremely tough times, and I almost dropped out at one point. Fortunately, during my time at university, I met numerous people with whom I could converse and socialize, but I never viewed any of them as potential romantic interests. I never approached anyone in that manner, and most of the time they had boyfriends, causing me to either cease communication or continue as mere friends. In any case, time passed, and I remained preoccupied with thoughts of the same girl. She was perpetually on my mind. While living in the city, I managed to save some money and purchase a nice necklace as a gift. During the holiday break, I intended to return to my hometown where she would also be present. I planned to meet her and discuss the situation, considering whether I could either put an end to it or perhaps discover that she still harbored similar feelings. However, I ended up returning later than anticipated due to several exams at school. Once I arrived back, I texted her, asking if we could meet perhaps for a movie or dinner. She responded, stating, "I would love to, but I am returning to university tomorrow. I actually came here early." That day, I felt downcast and disappointed. I had already lost touch with her on multiple occasions throughout those 3 years at university. I would text her and she would reply a day later. I would call and she would not answer. The last time I heard her voice was in 2019, and now it was 2023. I cannot express how much I long to hear her voice. If I recall correctly, the conversation occurred on February 4, 2023. She was supposed to leave for university on February 5. I was both upset and angry, questioning whether her words were truthful or if she had fabricated the excuse to avoid meeting me. On the evening of February 6, after my parents returned from the hospital and settled down at home, my mother insisted on not taking her medication and kept the doctor waiting until midnight. I stayed awake that night. I cannot precisely remember if I was watching the NFL All-Star game or an NBA game, but I was awake until approximately 4:17 a.m. when I experienced one of the most traumatic events of my life. We endured a magnitude 7.8 earthquake, which some of you may have heard about or are familiar with. The government heavily downplayed and concealed the event as if attempting to diminish its impact. The lack of accountability for the deaths caused by this earthquake in my country was also disheartening. To me, it resembled an apocalypse. I felt the tremors, and when I glanced out the window from the fifth floor, I observed a bright white flash followed by the neighboring apartment building collapsing. Afterward, my entire family and I waited in the open space of our building, dreading the worst outcome. After a few minutes of shaking, the first floor of our building collapsed, and fortunately we managed to escape the rubble without any injuries within my family. However, when I stepped outside, it resembled a scene from an apocalypse: collapsed buildings, torrential rain, and injured individuals. It was a complete catastrophe, and we attempted to reach everyone we could, but the phones were inoperable, and the rescue teams could not reach us because their own buildings had collapsed, trapping them as well. We were entirely stranded. At that moment, I truly despised myself. I prayed fervently, hoping that she had not lied and had left for another city before the disaster struck. About 4 days later, the first rescue team arrived in the city. After the calamity, the phones began to function again, and while I waited for my phone to charge, I fell asleep on the concrete outside. When I woke up the following morning, I noticed that she had called, but I could not answer. I felt utterly shattered. I went to a secluded area, crying profusely until I learned that she was safe. The overwhelming longing I felt for her constricted my throat, and it felt as though my heart was enclosed by walls. I told myself that if I never saw her again or heard from her, it would be acceptable as long as she was unharmed. Luckily, she had vacated for another city a day before the earthquake and returned to university. Since she was far from the affected areas, she only learned about the earthquake afterward. Over the next 10 to 15 days, she worked ceaselessly as a nurse, making calls for assistance, providing aid, and coordinating with hospitals. She even collaborated with her university, attempting to return to Antakya like a genuine superhero. After the earthquake, I relocated to a different city for work. In my third year at university, I began working as a software developer at a large company, and simultaneously, I needed to complete an internship to graduate. During this time, some of my inconsiderate professors subjected me to extremely difficult situations that I still cannot explain due to legal reasons. My apologies for that. Even though their actions were unjust, some of those worthless individuals could have caused me significant legal trouble. For about 2 to 3 months, I kept trying to communicate with this girl, but she would not answer the phone. She would mention that she was unavailable or busy with something. She was never outright rude, but I could not comprehend why she was behaving that way. I was genuinely curious about how she was doing and what her circumstances were like, but we could never engage in a proper conversation. Ultimately, I thought to myself, we are doomed. It is clear she does not want to communicate with me, so I decided to stop reaching out. For approximately 3 months, I did not message her. I was attempting to move on as this process had drained me significantly and I yearned to alleviate that burden. However, after 3 months, she texted me inquiring about how I was doing. I was exhausted and replied, "I am not doing well, here are the reasons." We were unable to converse adequately, and I informed her that I had been attempting to communicate my feelings for 4 years, but she had never given me the opportunity. We had not spoken face to face and I had never heard her voice. When I texted her, I would usually receive a response 2 days later. I explained how fatigued I felt and naturally I added that I had always considered her a friend. To my surprise, I received the response, "I see you as a friend too." I assure you, when it comes to relationships with women, I have been quite poor. I do not comprehend how to converse, how to get to know someone, or how to articulate my feelings. Yes, I acknowledge that, but over these 4 years, it was apparent that the nature of our conversations, my manner of speaking, and some of the messages I sent was never confined strictly to friendship. Although I may not understand women exceptionally well, when I inquired of many girls in my vicinity regarding this situation, the common response was, if someone fails to recognize that this message extends beyond mere friendship, they are either foolish or feigning ignorance. From that day forward, I hoped she might send me a casual "how are you?" or something of the sort. However, for an entire year there was silence. To be honest, I had begun to move forward, but after 1 year, the fact that she had not reached out to me even once became more painful than I could articulate. After that day, she never left my mind. Almost 2 years will soon pass. During this time in November 2024, my mother's condition deteriorated, and I took a leave of absence from school to be with her and care for her. After about a month, my mother passed away before my eyes. On the day of the funeral, there were hundreds of attendees, yet I had never felt so isolated in my life, surrounded by so many people. I could not help but reflect, I wish just once she had asked me how I was doing. She had always offered me support with her words in everything, whether regarding my mother or my father. I no longer wish to exhaust myself pondering her or searching for a needle in a haystack within this emptiness. What do you think I should do? I am not incompetent at having normal conversations with women, but when it comes to those I like or find attractive, my hands and feet begin to tremble. Yes, I am not particularly appealing, and yes, I have gained considerable weight during these stressful periods, but I genuinely desire a fresh start in my life. What can I do? What would you suggest? I currently lack anyone to converse with. Additionally, I am living in a very isolated area far from social environments. I have returned to my hometown and I graduated just a few months ago. The city is in ruins with most individuals residing in rural areas, myself included. Honestly, I am at a loss regarding what to do. I also feel insecure about my appearance and I admit that. I find myself questioning why someone like me would ever be liked by a girl like her. Yet I am uncertain if this mindset is typical or correct. This is all I wish to express. I apologize if I have appeared to unload trauma, but I genuinely felt the need to explain my circumstances. I sincerely hope to change and welcome someone special into my life. If you have any personal advice, I would be grateful to receive a message. I would love to converse if anyone is interested. If there are any mistakes in my writing or anything unclear, I apologize. I am proficient in English, but it is not my first language. I composed this in my native language and had it translated.